Coming up next on Insights on PBS Hawaii, who owns Hawaii's water, and is there enough of it? Aloha and welcome to Insights on PBS Hawaii. I'm Dan Boylan. Access to fresh, clean drinking water is critical to Hawaii's future. While supplies are plentiful for some of the state, parts of Maui and the Big Island are experiencing severe drought. In some of these same areas, streams have been diverted, forcing some farmers to leave their fields fallow. Who owns Hawaii's water, and is there enough of it? We invite you to join our conversation by calling, emailing, or tweeting your questions and comments. Now to our panel. Ernest Lau is the manager and chief engineer at the Honolulu Board of Water Supply. Ernie is responsible for ensuring the city can provide a safe and dependable and tasty drinking water. Is tasty in the, I'm not sure tasty's in there. Ed Wendt is a sixth-generation taro farmer in East Maui. Ed has been involved in contesting established water rights. Williamson Chang is a professor specializing in water rights at the University of Hawaii, William S. Richardson School of Law. William Tam is a deputy director of the State Department of Land and Natural Resources. As an attorney, Bill specialized in water, land use, and natural resources at the Attorney General's office, right? All right, Bill, you get first shot. Who does own Hawaii's water?
Actually, no one owns water. The state is the trustee of the water, and people have important use rights. It was established both in the Constitution and in our tradition. And what's interesting about Hawaii's water law is that we've come back to the old Hawaiian notion that we share in our uses, everybody has important needs, but no one owns water.
And yet, you've just spent 7 years, Ed, arguing for your rights to some water?
I believe it's 25 years.
25? Well,
25 years.
Take us through the last 7.
Well, where I come from is a taro farming community. It's been I'm the 6th generation of farmer. In the 25 years in a contested case, when we first went to court and we were awarded a victory, the judge ordered 180 days to release the vai. It took 7 years. So we have been in a struggle for quite some time.
And you had to go to court to get?
Yes, sir. And we are still in court.
And you're still in court about it. Now, the water code. I see the water code brought up in the literature on what's that all about?
The water code is a state law that regulates water. It was enacted into law in 1989. The goal was, Hawaii was one of the few states that didn't have any laws regulating water. There were crises during the 70s. There was a crisis on the question of ownership. There was a crisis in Pearl Harbor in terms of desalination of the water. There was that toxification of water in Mililani. The public became very concerned, and when they learned that there was no regulation of water, they pushed for a water code through the Constitutional Convention, and one was passed in 1989. Unfortunately, it divides the state into areas which are under protection and you need a permit to get water, and those areas which are not deemed so critical that you don't need a permit.
What's an example of an area where you need a permit?
Would be Waihole, or in the Iao area, or in the Waiha, the Four Waters of Maui. Those are where water crises are going on. There's two types of areas. One's a groundwater designation, and groundwater is water under the ground, and the other is a surface water designation where there's streams or rivers that are flowing, and there's a crisis or there's an emergency in that area of the law.
Now, do you have enough water where you are?
We come off of surface water. The diverters divert over 60 billion gallons of water a year. And from what I hear, it's just as much as the island of Oahu for domestic use. Over 60 billion just come out of our area.
But do you have enough for your loading?
Well, we never had nothing. At one time, we had abundance. but the diversions was increased, and until they took everything, till there was nothing left. Then we had to prove it in court that we need water. After all those years, we finally got some water released back into the taro fields.
Who are these diverters, Bill?
I think you ought to ask Ed. He's the expert on Maui here.
Well, for us, and on our side of East Maui is East Maui Irrigation, who's a subsidiary of Alexander and Baldwin, the sugar company. And East Maui Irrigation also, they transfer the water for the sugar and farming of sugar, but they also sell the county of Maui. I think something like anywhere between 8 to 12 million gallons a day that goes to the county. And they pay 1/5 of a penny per 1,000 gallons. 1/5 of a penny, that's all.
That's a bargain. Sounds like to me.
I think we all should get in the water business
Right.
if we could get it for 1/5 of a penny.
How much of this diversion is taking place, and where is it taking place?
Well, the diversions throughout the state are the old plantations primarily. The diverted water from the windward side to the dry leeward side or central Maui, for example, where there was a lot of sunshine but not much rainfall. And so these are historic systems that have been around for a very long time. The Water Code, as Bill mentioned, is a transitional document by which we're taking some old practices and seeing how we must reorganize ourselves for the future. One of the things that is of concern to us is the declining rainfall that's occurring around the islands, and that is occurring for a variety of reasons, but one of which I think maybe I can show simply on a chart if you could put that up.
They'll put it up.
Okay.
It'll be here in a second, I'm sure, that chart. There it is. All
Okay,
right.
if you look at that chart, what you'll see is that there's two pressures on the rain clouds that hit the windward sides of the islands. One is the normal event of trade winds hitting the mountains and rising up. The other is the trade wind inversion, which is when there's fewer trade winds and there's a pressure downward. The net effect of that is to shrink the thickness of the clouds now hitting the windward sides of our islands. That means less rainfall is getting on the ground. And there's one other aspect to that is as exotic plants move up the mountains like strawberry guava, there's a very high evaporation rate. So the net effect is that the average rainfall now hitting the islands has declined by 10 to 12% in the last 30 years, and the stream flows are down about 20% over the last 100 years. So the water that Ed talked about in terms of what the taro patches had, what was available, is declining. Now it varies from year to year, but nonetheless, this is going to become a more serious problem because the leeward sides of the islands are going to become even more dry than they have been in the past. And the variation in the rainfall is going to become higher. So we're going to have to take some steps aggressively to take new measures to deal with this problem.
You know, Ernie, I have sympathy for Ed, but I have real concern about whether I'm going to have drinking water over the next 10 or 15 years on Oahu. Am I?
For Oahu, it's a different situation where we're blessed with really good underground aquifers, probably some of the largest in the state. For example, Oahu's sustainable yield for groundwater is about 400 million gallons of water a day. And roughly right now we're using probably about only half of it. Large-scale sugar, unlike Maui, has gone out of business on Oahu. There isn't as much agricultural water demand on Oahu competing for the water use, the groundwater. So we believe that there'll be adequate supplies for, the 10, 20-year range. However, that doesn't mean that we are not going to be vigilant and watch the resources, especially as Bill mentioned, rainfall is declining. We need to take care of our watersheds.
And what about development? I mean, there are two big housing projects in planning out in the leeward side, and then there's all this stuff at Kaka'ako, and you're saying we're using half of the water our supply, but that's an awful lot of building going on.
Let's put it in perspective. At least the two housing projects, I'm not sure what the total water demand for the projected ultimate growth in Kaka'ako is. It might be about 10 million gallons a day on average. One of the projects in Ewa, their water demand is about 4 million gallons of potable water and about 2 million gallons of non-potable water. The other project that I'm not going to name, but you're referring to on Central Oahu, I think the demand there is about 2 million gallons of water a day. So kind of remember that Our sustainable yield is 407 million gallons of water a day that's available from the aquifers. But water use in those projects maybe amount in terms of potable water usage, maybe around total of 6 or 8 million gallons.
There is one other point about this, though. I mean, that's true. Right now, it's not a problem. But we've got to look 30, 40 years down the line, because the infrastructure we are building now will be there, and as that growth occurs, we got to take into account if we want agriculture back. I mean, the reason we have abundance right now is sugar left Oahu, principally. If we're ever going to have Oahu's breadbasket restored, which would be central Oahu and then the North Shore, that's going to take the same water that was once in sugar.
You mean more agriculture?
Yes.
Significantly more agriculture.
So we're going to have to kapu that water for agriculture, or we're not going to have it.
Is this where the water code comes in? I mean, will it, to kapuing this new water or this water?
This was where the water code was supposed to come in. The water code was supposed to be tied to a planning document by where you inventoried the amount of water that's available. You planned ahead, you agreed upon what you're going to build here, here, and here, and you determined whether there was enough water for that, and then you made your permits. But the water plan was not tied to the permits in the original water code, and that was a major failing of the code.
Well, why didn't they do that? Why wasn't that done?
Well, the reality was that there was an initial effort, which was inadequate because it was very much only an inventory. A plan actually requires you to tie together the particular use to the end use. I will say, just to show you an example, the Big Island has done a plan, which was what this looks like, but the other islands and the other counties, unfortunately, have been rather slow. So we're about 25 years behind in getting these plans in place. When these are in place, then we'll be doing what Bill talked about. This is a critical piece, and this has been lacking, and we're trying to push this now very quickly.
And for Oahu, if I could say, the approach has been a little different from the other islands. We've taken more of a watershed management plan approach with 8 different watershed areas divided on Oahu. One thing to note is that Oahu is predominantly a groundwater management area that is controlled by the Water Commission, looking at the water resources. So in terms of compromising the groundwater resources on Oahu, we feel pretty confident by working closely with the Water Commission that the Board of Water Supply can make sure that the resources are protected. Our plans are, we've done 3 of 8 plans, and we hope in the next 5 to 10 years to finish the rest of the plans.
Ed, how will the next generation of farmers get water to farm? Do you see in the long run? I mean, I constantly hear about Maui. It seems to me, as long as I've lived in Hawaii, I've heard about problems on Maui with water, droughts or in some part of the island or another. Do you see it in the long run?
Well, I think right now, because of our accomplishments through the years of getting back some water into the lo'is, what I see today on a daily basis, we're finding more young people coming back and farming. Taro is a staple food. It's a way of life for us. And it did make a difference when the water was started to come back. And you can go out there today, you can see a great difference. I don't think our Hawaiian people and our people in our community and villages is going to give it up, because it's a way of life that has been interrupted by diversions. And this, like I said, I'm a 6th generation. I'm just one, there's many more like me. We cannot just walk away from our home.
But you were telling me earlier that you people are building houses in areas now.
Yes, we have a particular home that has been just built in the taro fields, and we are very concerned about that, because where this house was built, there was a cultural landscape book put together by the County of Maui and Group 70, explaining about the aupua'a of Wailuanui and Keanai, and identifying even where the wetlands are. And Professor McGregor from here wrote a book called Ku'aina with Uncle Harry Mitchell, identifying the same place. And for us, it's a kepuka. It's a place of farmers, taro farmers on Maui. And again, your question, I see more people coming back to taro farming as long as the resources are there. And I'm hoping it's not only for Maui, because here on this island, I know there are a lot of wetland taro patches that are fallow. And people,
Because they can't get the water.
supposedly.
I'm sorry.
I was going to add that surface water rights for taro are called appurtenant rights under the law. They are constitutionally protected. Every Supreme Court case has always affirmed that they are protected, and they are the first priority. And we are literally, in the next month or two, beginning a process for the first time ever of protecting appurtenant rights on Maui through an administrative process in the code. In the past, you always had to go to court. And one of the things the code does well is it provides tools to act prospectively. Instead of a court suit, like looking in a rearview mirror at the past. The code has the tools, and we've created a process so that people can protect appurtenant rights without having to go to court.
Williamson, are you as sanguine as he is about that?
I'm not. 20 years ago, we filed, and I was one of the people who went out and met farmers and filed pertinent water rights claims, and there was 5,000 claims filed, and nothing was done. And those are, as Bill Tam points out, constitutionally protected, statutorily protected, the highest right, and it's the right that's protected, not the use. And we're finally getting around, I think that's commendable, to the certification and the quantification of appurtenant water rights. Appurtenant water rights are what Ed needs for his taro.
Because the pertinent water rights would...
Pertinent water rights are defined as the rights to water that you had as to a piece of land that was during the time of the Mahele in taro or sweet potato cultivation. And so this was what the king wanted. Basically, he wanted after the Mahele to protect all of his tenant farmers with enough water so they could remain in the style of living that they were accustomed to. And yet the sugar companies were able to convert the law into one in which they owned the water, and they began diverting it and taking it away from the windward sides, creating a shortage of water and forcing Hawaiians to move from the windward sides.
I'm not here to defend sugar companies, but they did invest a lot of money, did they not, in the ability to move water around and to take it places that frankly aided the state and aided the growth of the sugars, and I think on Maui it helps employ 600 people on a plantation.
You know, the plantation did do good in that sense, but from what I understand, in the late 1800s, when they were allowed to dig the ditches, there were rules that if you had affect anyone below the diversions,
right,
you were supposed to release it. But in our case, we had to prove it in court. Now, like this gentleman is saying about our rights, our pertinent rights, also native rights is our state constitutional rights. We gather in these streams that has been dewatered. So our rights has been affected and not upheld. Only when we started going to the courts, then as we won, it was enforced. But we have these rights for protection.
So, go ahead.
Well, all we want them to uphold our rights.
There is no water that flows from one island to another. Therefore, why should the state have anything to say about how water is used? Let each island make and enforce all the laws regulating water usage on that island. You'd like that, wouldn't you, Ernie? Because you got a lot of water.
Yeah. Actually, when the Honolulu Board of Water Supply was created, it had some of the regulatory powers that the commissions had taken on in terms of especially development of wells. I can see the value. I've also served in my past as a deputy for the Water Commission, so I can understand their role in water management and in keeping and protecting the public trust responsibilities of water, holding it for the people of Hawaii. So I think some of the difficulties we see right now in the inability to develop regulations or rules or plans is a sign of lack of resources given to the commission to do their job.
Yeah, that actually has been a big problem. Our staff was cut from 24 to 12, and the DLNR in general is we have about 1% of the state budget, and we manage in one form or another about 40% of the land and water in this state. And so we are right now basically overworked for what in terms of the number of people we have for the responsibilities we have. But to go back to your earlier point, we had this discussion when we adopted the water code. One of the reasons the counties couldn't be the regulator is because they're the principal user.
There's a conflict of interest.
And it's a conflict of interest for them to be regulating themselves. Now, we work very closely with them, but they can't really be in the shoes of deciding issues in which they themselves are an applicant for the water. So that's one of the principal reasons you still have to have statewide standards, which then everybody needs to comply with.
Do you agree?
I agree. I think that question points out one of the problems, which was during the water code's formation, there was a lot of home rule sentiment saying only Oahu has water problems. We on Maui, we on the Big Island don't have water problems. We don't want to be ruled from Oahu. And for that reason, they divided the water code into areas in which there is a crisis and which is going to be permitting, and areas in which there was a hands-off attitude. It's like the Wild West. And it's sort of like the patient has to be dying before the water code comes in and regulates.
For lack of water. I'm confused. We're constantly told that Hawaii has a drought. Yet this drought never seems to be a problem when developers want to build more houses and condos. Are we short on water or are we not? Cover it live. Sherry wants to know. Is there anything that stops, why aren't developers stopped for lack of water? Don't we ever say anything to them?
If there are areas where we feel that the resources are at risk or we don't have enough capacity, then we'll stop those developments or we'll restrict those developments. For Oahu's case, what's actually happened, total water use for Oahu from the Board of Water Supply, rather than continue to climb and increase over time, has actually gone down. From 1990 to the present, it dropped about 9% island-wide. And we attribute that to water conservation, water efficiency in the building codes, recycled water, people becoming more aware, and also the cost of water and sewer services is creating more incentive for people to conserve.
Lori on Kauai wants to know, is there long-term use of agricultural chemicals ruining our water? And they're interested in this problem over on Kauai.
First of all, it's principally an issue that the Department of Ag or the Department of Health manages. We don't deal with pesticides per se. That's an Ag or Health Department issue. We do require a water quality plan so that that aspect has to be brought into the planning. And by the way, Gary Gill will be at our October meeting to talk about this in mid-October. So it's a live subject right now. But the principal regulation comes through federal law and also the Department of Ag. So I think you need to address that to those folks.
Is part of the permitting for a development that they have to check with you guys?
Yes. They have to consult with us. They usually start off with an inquiry about water availability. What we do is we hold off a water commitment to the developer to the very last moment. So if things change or conditions change, we can then restrict or change our conditions on the development. At the time of building permit or submission of construction plans for improvements to the infrastructure, that's when we'll make a commitment to the developers.
In terms of a permit, literally a permit?
A water use allocation from our system capacity. Or they may have to develop their own sources, store reservoirs, or pipelines.
I agree with Ernie, but there's one thing that tends to happen in the planning commissions, the land use commission, Board of Land and Natural Resources. People come in one by one for these permits, and if you ask, is there water now? The answer is yes. The problem is not literally in the next couple of years. The problem is as you start to approach the limits of the supply, if you haven't planned and sort of kapooed water for future generations, for future ag needs, or as we're facing now, the decline in overall rainfall, then what you do is you get to a situation where, for example, you want to build a school someplace and people have already used up the close water that's easy to get. Like Hawaiian Homes, for example, is faced with the problem that they know what their water needs may be, but they don't have the money to build the infrastructure. So when it comes time to do it, 10 years from now, they can't drill there. They're going to have to drill 5 miles away, which means you got to build the infrastructure and go further and deeper. So the delay in the public sector of getting their projects online is going to result in more expense to the taxpayer for those projects unless we start putting together what the public needs are early enough to say this area is going to be kapu for future public needs.
Dan, if I could say, the approach for the county water use and development plans, which is part of the Hawaii plan under the code, for Oahu, our objectives are to promote sustainable watersheds, protect and enhance water quality and quantity, protect Native Hawaiian rights and traditional cultural practices, facilitate public participation, education, and implementation of projects, and meet future demands at reasonable costs. So we try to factor those things, at least on Oahu, area by area with those communities. It is a slower process. It requires a lot of dialogue and discussion, and we work closely with our Department of Planning and Permitting to do this.
Williamson?
The real question is the hard choices haven't been made. 30 years ago, John Mink, a hydrologist and the husband of Patsy Mink, said, you can put 2 million people on this island with the water that we have, but that would be paving over everything. And the question is, do we have enough water for agriculture, for stream life? And he's listing basically, and I hate to put it this way, a motherhood and apple pie kind of list where all these are desirables, but what's the priority? What's the hard choice? If you have to make a choice between development and taro, what are you going to choose?
Don't they all, Ed, my guess is you would think they always come down on the side of development.
Yes, sir. Development will be the first priority over taro, and it clearly identifies that as sugar when they did all the diversions throughout the years, through all the islands. They took away the resources from these taro fields. Now those taro fields cannot be activated again because that resources was taken away and allocated for the residential or commercial properties. Once you allocate that river, it's very hard to get it back.
Now, you've been attacked for motherhood and apple pie objectives, I believe, by Williamson. Are you going to take that, Ernie?
You know, I'm a kind of a simple person and a little corny at times, so I really believe in some of these things. And, you know, I think it's the issue of people working together. We'd like to project out what the ultimate development will be in areas, but we really don't know what the magic ball will say, what development and market forces will dictate growth. But I think it's important that we keep in mind, keeping a close eye on the resources, and when we get even close, and Bill, I think you've come up with a precautionary principle that in lack of science, you know, we're going to err on the side of being conservative and protect the resources. So as we do this long-term planning, we need to look forward as long as we can look forward, and if we anticipate growth in different areas, then we need to evaluate its impact on the resources, and if we feel it's at risk, then we'll have to step in to do that. You know, on Kauai, I was accused, I was the water manager on Kauai Department of Water for a while, and they accused me of being the second water department there, second planning department, because I refused so many permits because I didn't have an adequate infrastructure. I think the question is going to be, and it's an age-old question, does water decide how we grow, or does other quality of life issues decide how we grow? And then are the resources adequate or not? And if they're not, then we have to change our approach.
I suggest a rule of thumb that I find really useful is to think like a grandparent, not like a parent, but like a grandparent, because you have to anticipate another generation beyond you. And when you do that, you change your time frame. And with water, it's very difficult because you're making investments that are going to last 40 or 50 years. And so we've got to change from just a cost expense kind of thinking from year to year to what we're going to do for our grandchildren.
But the next question, Bill, is that you teach at the William S. Richardson School of Law. Nobody ever wrote better law, at least in regard to access to the ocean, for example, and Hawaiian rights, Ed, than Bill Richardson did, right?
Right.
And yet that was Bill's been gone a while, and he hadn't been on a court in a long, long time, and yet you're saying that we're 25 years behind in trying to protect water. Why haven't we gotten way beyond this and not have any diversion at all and water rights be changed entirely? Why hasn't that happened?
Because we haven't made the hard decisions. We were supposed to, when we developed the water code, it was time for planning ahead, like he said, as if you're a grandparent, thinking ahead 40, 50, 100 years. What is Hawaii going to look like? Is it going to have any taro? Is it going to have more development? We're just, as Bill has pointed out, taking developers one by one and allocating water to them without thinking of the big picture, what it's going to look like 50, 60, 100 years from now.
You were going to, think you were going to say something.
There is a great tendency, no offense to engineers, but if most people, if they're told,
I'm an engineer.
That
realize.
means you're about to get it. When a guy says something like that, you're
Sounds
about
like
to
it.
get it, Ernie.
like the military to some extent, if you're asked to do something, you're trained to say, yes, I can do it. And so an engineer or the Board of Water Supply or somebody says, can you find water? And the answer usually is yes. Very seldom do people say no. So the sea anchor question that Bill Chang points out is, where's the forcing mechanism to actually require us to think in a very specific way in a specific place about what this is going to look like? And the forcing mechanism has not been there for a long time. It's coming.
Tell me about this Water Commission. What's the Water Commission?
The Water Commission, as Bill
The
pointed
Hawaii Water Commission.
Correct. It was in 1978, the Constitution was amended to say the state must protect the water resources, and the legislature is to pass a water code. It took us 9 years. In 1987, it was passed, and there are 7 members: the chairman of the Board of Land and Natural Resources by virtue of his office, the chairwoman of the Department of Health, Loretta Fuddy, by virtue of her office, an individual who has an expertise in Native Hawaiian rights, and then 4 other individuals, not by county. And there's a reason for that. And the reason is the danger of having someone from that county become sort of the konehiki and everybody defers to them. So the notion is all 7 are expert in water. They're appointed by the governor from a nominating committee's selection of at least 3 individuals. Then they're confirmed by the Senate. So they serve 4 years, and they can serve up to 2 terms.
Who does the nominating?
There's a nominating committee that's 4 individuals. President of the Senate, Speaker of the House choose 1 person each. The governor chooses 2. That group vets all the applicants, sends to the governor at least 3 individuals for each open position, and it's a rotating board. So about every year or 2, there's 1 or 2 people coming on and coming off.
How many taro farmers make it onto this commission? Is there an Ed Wendt on this commission? And are there people like that, or are they people who, might be more in the power circle? And
I don't know of any taro farmers to date. I can't think of any.
Yeah, I know that's a good question, because I've been asked that many times about having someone with, even myself, to sit on this, and it never did happen. And I'm not sure if they got anyone now.
Kamana Beamer, who's the Beamer family, was recently selected, and he is a new member of the commission. And he brings an enormous knowledge of the Mahele and that period, because he's a scholar of that era. In fact, his book is about to come out this October, I believe. And he's a very thoughtful person. So I think he will bring an enormous knowledge of Hawaiian history to the commission.
I heard about this. I think he's coming on. I think in our situation is, like Ernie, native rights. And we're native rights and the public trust. We know we have constitutional rights. It's enforcing the laws. It's one thing. How do you have the officials enforce the law?
have you ever had to go before the Water Commission to ask for something or testify?
We've gone through all of this together, and also with the DLNR and BLNR and the Water Commission. What we have experienced is enforcement. Why did, after we come out of court, judge say 180 days to release the water? Took 7 years. That's a long time.
That's a long time. If we miscalculate on all of this and we run out of water, you engineers have not calculated correctly, Ernie, who will be responsible? What entity is in charge of making sure we don't run out?
State Water Commission. That's their constitutional and statutory charge, is to be sure to conserve water for the future. But as I said before, we don't have the plan. We haven't made the hard choices.
Go ahead.
If I could add to that, State Water Commission regulators, I represent a utility that provides water to our community, and water is important for life. A little corny, though. Yeah. As a utility, though, I have a trust responsibility to make sure that there are water for people on at least on Oahu, adequate water supply today and into the future. So we will be watching that. And we have initiated long-term planning and actually looking at up to 2060 in terms of impacts on rainfall, working with the University of Hawaii. So we are committed to the long-term planning and to support and ensure that the resources are preserved, protected, and there for the community.
One additional thing I think we haven't touched on is stream flows. And one of the obligations the Commission has is to protect the in-stream flows. There was an old notion that if water was left in the stream, it was wasted. Well, that notion is pretty antiquated now, because if you talk to fishermen, that water is essential for the estuaries and the coral. That's essential to have a healthy fisheries. One of the problems we're having with surface water runoff that takes topsoil and pollutions into the ocean is killing reefs. So one of the things we're really focused on is part of the way we protect our coral reefs and our fisheries is what we do on the land side. And that is affected a lot by water. For example, when you have a very large rain event, and that water runs off quickly.
You can see it, yeah.
Right. There's a couple of problems with that. One is it doesn't recharge the groundwater. So like the dams and reservoirs that have been built over the last 100 years are actually really important to capture that pulse of stormwater so it can stay there, recharge the groundwater. Many of those dams and reservoirs aren't being maintained or used anymore. If that runs off, it also takes a lot of dirt with it. There's a study on the east shore of Molokai that says that about 50% of the soil that gets into the coral comes from about only 3% of the land, usually the steep unvegetated portions. We need to start going back and looking at our, especially in the leeward sides, how do we manage our lands? Because that's going to be critical in this.
It seems to me there's just an awful lot of interrelated stuff here. I mean, stream flow, maintenance of watersheds, even feral animals that can destroy watersheds, right? Or destroy the...
That's actually part of the state's, the DLNR's Rainfall Follows the Forest initiative, which was Ernie and Bill talked about briefly. If we don't protect that upper area where the native plants are, and frankly, we're going to have to fence some of the goats and the pigs and the deer out, then we're going to have invasives move up, native plants which capture the water are going to be eliminated, and we're going to lose even more rain. If you talk to Sumner Urban at Ulupalakua Ranch, in his lifetime he's talked about invasives going from 800 feet elevation to 1,300 feet elevation, and he's a cattleman, and he's got a drought on his hands just because of that problem that's occurred in his own lifetime. So we're going to have to do something about that. I will also encourage people to look on the web at a place called Wahi, which is part of his ranch, and there's been an enormous effort at restoring dryland forest there, essentially by fencing and taking out the invasives. And you can actually see it from the Google Earth.
And it occurs to me that some of the same people who live in your part of the island might very well be hunters, and if you said to them, we got to worry about feral animals, we don't want those, we don't want, they'd give you trouble.
Yes, but what we're finding out with the feral pigs on our side, the state had put high elevation fence lines, and then the hunters come from the bottom up. Evidently it's working because they've done this for a while. You don't hear much hunters catching wild boar. But the invasive species, it is terrible. It is literally taking over the whole rainforest. And it is going up to the higher elevation. And all the diversions that is on the streams and rivers, the water do not reach the ocean. It has killed the life, the cycle of the O'opu, Opai, Hi'iwai. Nothing below. You must hike for miles to go to their ditches and be able to gather and harvest. I listen to you and you have a great mana'o for Oahu. Sound like Oahu is doing fine on water. And I know Bill for many years and this gentleman here who speaks on native rights. What we see on Maui, Maui is hurting. Maui needs water for development, to grow. The sugar company takes over 60 billion gallons of water. I do not know the county of Maui how much water they do take. But from what I realize and heard and know, people up country cannot even have a permit to build a home because there's no water. So for our island, The water is very precious, and it's getting more scarce.
Is the situation as complex as the one that Ed describes? Is it as complex on the Big Island as on
In Kona, not on the windward side of the Big Island. On the dry side in Kona, Kauai South is an area that's going to get increased attention. In fact, last month the National Park Service filed a petition with the Water Commission to designate the Keauhou area right from the airport toward Honokahau. That area, if you look at the development plans in that area, there's an enormous amount of proposed development. The water table there is very thin. There is not much groundwater. There is some Mauka water in perched areas, but that's an area we're going to have to take a look at. And so that's probably the next Maui.
Some of the outer islands don't have a quantity problem. They have a problem of getting water from where it's wet to where it's dry. But I wanted to go back to an earlier point, which was he said basically the streams are running dry. The water code has a mechanism, and it was to be enforced, which was interim stream flows or in-stream flow standards. And we've just around now gotten around to setting those. And for years, they just said whatever was in the stream is the standard. It's another problem of enforcement. We have some of these things on the books that can remedy the situation. And it's been, 20, 30 years since the water code, and we haven't been able to enforce or put into effect standards which streams should have to flow through the ocean.
Several people have asked this. This is Charles in Lahaina. What are we doing about desalination plants? Why don't we have many of these? Are we doing anything about desalination?
It is something that we're looking at. However, desalination is actually very expensive. So its use is going to have to come at a time where it makes economical sense to go to desalination. For Oahu, we still have a pretty abundant supply of groundwater. It's going to get more expensive. That doesn't mean that all 400 million gallons is developable at a very affordable rate. So at some point we may cross over into desalination. Other areas that are water short, it is still an expensive option.
It would be too expensive to do something like that for, say, the Leeward area, the Big Island, or for parts of Maui.
It would depend on if the community or the residents that are going to use that water can afford to pay for that.
It's very electric intensive. That requires a lot of electricity. You have brine you have to dispose of. It can be used in small isolated places that have no other choices. But I'm very skeptical of using a lot of desalt as an answer to large-scale urban use.
One thing that we're forgetting is actually, I think what the Native Hawaiians knew, that you don't want to waste water. You want to use water very efficiently for what you need. Take only what you need. I think the idea of conservation, extending the resource, preserving the resource, protecting it is very important. And it's actually probably a more cost-effective way to extend our water supplies to deal with climate change in the future.
That's actually a really important point. If you were to spend $1 million on new source development or use it in the forest, if you restore the forest, you'll collect more water than you would have for the 1 million gallons you've tried to pull out. So protecting the forest is the best long-term thing we can do.
Yeah, when you think about what Ed is saying, before Cook came, there were 800,000 Hawaiians living here who lived off the surface water and grew taro, not touching the groundwater. And you had a population of 800,000. It was comfortable. And they fed each other, they clothed each other, and basically they supported that kind of a population. What's gone wrong? That's the question.
Perhaps we're not as easily self-sufficient now as they were in 1773? Or?
No, we're not also good conservators of water.
Williamson, somebody wants to know, do you think we need to truly cancel all existing water rights to ensure there's enough water for today's farms?
Cancel water rights?
Yeah.
No, that would mean canceling Ed's water rights. Ed has the highest water right, the Appurtenant water right, and in 1973 we had the McBride decision, which basically transformed private ownership of water to a public trust. So we've done a lot of canceling, and that's very controversial, going back to 1973.
James, a Water Konohiki from Hana, Maui. I think you know James. Panel is wrong. There are still Hawaiian ahupuahas that are still intact. We own the water, period. Culturally, we have the right to clean the rivers and be sure the water runs down. I've told Mr. Wendt that for years. You have the right to stop the diversions. These leases died in 1929. Bill, you're giving me a funny look. What's that look?
Well,
I've
I've heard about it. You know, I believe that we do own the water because the water in our area, because what has happened, the diverter has just come and just take our water, but I'm not the law. So you have to answer that.
Well, you're the law. You're the law.
The concept which the Supreme Court has articulated in the Waihoʻi case is that of a public trust doctrine. And that notion of being a steward, the sovereign as the steward, is very much what actually was occurring during pre-contact period. There were shared arrangements. There was reciprocity between the king and the people. Both had obligations. Both had benefits. And in some ways, what the secular law is today is very similar in its structure to what was before. Hawaii is not like the Western United States. It is not a prior appropriation model, which is like last in, first out. That's the way they do it in California. That's not the way they do it in Hawaii. Everyone has a shared use here. It's a question of how do you work out that sharing.
Mike in East Maui says, for many years, the East Maui Irrigation Company has been diverting water. Their system is deteriorating and leaking lots of water. Is any agency seeing that they are operating efficiently? Are there agencies who look at deteriorating systems? Is that done by city, by county, or state, or who?
Right now, East Maui Irrigation is the sole caretaker of the ditches because they put the ditches in. I should believe on the dams and stuff that the state have officials that go in. We realize that the ditch systems are falling apart from what we understand. And what we believe is they haven't put the money into the ditch systems because of the uncertainty of the case. They're on a month-to-month revocable lease or a holdover permit, they call it right now. So all of that has to be addressed, in which it is being addressed.
Ernie, what circumstances could put Oahu's clean water supply at risk? What safety measures are in place? We're constantly worried now about things being subverted.
You know, what it is constant monitoring of the condition of the resources. So collecting data on the condition of the groundwater resources for us, rainfall data is very important. You can't manage what you don't measure. So if we can keep the data, the collection of data going, we'll be able to understand when the resource is going to be compromised and work with the commission to, on our part, even voluntarily cut back on our usage if necessary.
Have you had your staff cut the way they have?
No. Board of Water Supply is self-sufficient financially. On the state side, and I came from the state also, they depend on the general fund excise tax revenue, and that goes with the wind on how the economy is doing. For us, we sustain it through water rates because it's important to keep these planning process, these water systems maintained, even if during slow economic times.
I'd like to make a plug for Ernie's work because the Board of Water Supplies on all the islands have very high quality water. It's inspected by the health department, and frankly, unlike bottled water, which is not inspected and often is only tap water claimed to be from someplace and is expensive to bring here, the Board of Water Supplies water is very good. And I would encourage people to take water out of the tap and frankly, not buy bottled water.
Yeah, some people are asking here, several people have asked about bottled water. How do you folks stand on bottled water? Do you have a position on bottled water?
Well, you know my answer to that.
It costs more than gasoline.
Yeah.
How do you get there?
In other words, if you buy a bottle of water, you're paying more per gallon than you're paying for gasoline. I mean, it's.
I guess that's right, isn't it?
It is right.
Yeah.
And
course.
it's probably only tap water alleged to be artesian springs, and it's not regulated under the Safe Drinking Water Act.
Golly, you guys have changed all my practices here tonight. Darn it. Here I go. Now we got to throw all those things out because they're expensive. I got to finish these. The Board of Water Supply is politically oriented, not technically oriented, Michael says.
would disagree with that. I believe my staff and I are very committed to managing the water supply system as best as we can. We have a lot of good sound technical people. By staying semi-autonomous, that's how we stay out of politics. By having less of the politicians influencing decisions and long-term planning. That's how we keep politics out of water.
Someone asked, Joe in Honolulu says, you're discussing water runoff. Can they talk about what can be done about the trees, such as ironwood trees, that are absorbing the water and destroying the natural resources? Does that make sense?
Ironwood trees do absorb a lot of water, but we don't have any jurisdiction over what people plant.
Can't do anything about that. Why not? Mayor of New York will stop people from drinking soda. If agriculture folks are having shortages when growing our food, what about the uses of water by golf courses? How is this determined and justified? A decade and a half ago, I think, on another time in the history of this little show, I can remember tremendous outrage at golf courses and the building of golf courses. I don't hear that outrage quite so much anymore. I don't know why.
For the Everplain, which is the second city being developed, Kapolei, we encourage the use of recycled wastewater for irrigation of golf courses. Don't use high-quality drinking water. Preserve that for people. Use lower-quality recycled water that would have flowed into the ocean through the outfalls, and reuse it on the golf courses or parks. So we use about 8 to 10 million gallons a day for irrigation and industrial uses out in Ewa.
Actually, the Waihoʻoli decision, the Supreme Court and the Water Commission both directed golf courses to start to do that. So that's a direction we're headed. In fact, the retreating and wastewater and collecting stormwater for irrigation purposes is a place we're going to have to start to look for our new water sources.
Yeah, there's been several people talking about the East Maui irrigation ditch system, and I'm wondering if your case took 7 years, right? Or over 7 years. Yeah, are there other cases along that coast that other people have brought?
Oh yes, yeah. I know people from Hana, they came up with that, I want to say Hanavi area. There's water that was taken out of there for pineapple too. And people challenged that too before. But so far it seems like our case it took a long time, but it's being addressed.
But in your case, you mean the whole village, right? The whole area. It's not just, it's not you alone.
27 streams and rivers.
East Maui.
East Maui.
In East Maui.
That's now back from the Supreme Court back to the Water Commission.
Right.
Now, I've read a little bit about some of these irrigation systems and some of these water systems, and they don't, most of them say they're not selling water, that's not what they do.
Well, they're not supposed to, but I was just telling this gentleman here that the county of Maui purchased, it's 8 to 12 million gallons a day from the East Maui irrigation. And we don't really know who else is purchasing water from this delivery people, because they're charging for delivery.
One of the goals of the water code was to prevent this buying and selling of water. That was one of the things that people of Hawaii abhorred.
But do you think it's going on?
Yes, I think. Oh yeah,
It's going on.
That's a basic.
Actually, there's no right to sell water because it's not something you own. So you cannot sell water. It's unconstitutional. What you do, what's going on, is you charge for the delivery of water. Which, the Board of Water Supply has a delivery system. You got to pay for it.
The infrastructure to get the water to people's homes.
Right. So
That's what they're
it's a
paying.
delivery charge, but it's not. There's no right to sell water.
Larry over in Pupukea says, this is an outstanding panel. They really know their stuff. And, I agree with him. He also has a comment, though. Ernie wants to know, name a development proposal on Oahu that has been denied water. I think he doesn't believe you.
I can't say for Oahu, but I can say for Kauai. But I don't remember one on Oahu being denied water. I think the approach has been at times to put the entire burden on the developer to find water and develop the resources and the infrastructure.
Ernie, you said you have adequate water supplies. Why do you always, every summer, put on a commercial saying that the public has to conserve water, that we have a water shortage?
I think it goes back to stewardship. In summer, especially when it's drier, rainfall is lower, and so we're pumping more out of the ground. What we want to do is manage that pumping rate so that we don't damage the resources. You don't want to waste water, bottom line, so that's why we go out with education. And we've been doing it for generations of children in schools.
Williamson, we're down to less than a minute. In 15 seconds, are you optimistic about the future of water rights in Hawaii and our long-term future?
No.
No.
I think the water code needs to be adjusted. I think it needs to be planned out like it was discussed. We have to look at it like we're grandparents 100 years down the line. We have to make the hard decisions. We haven't even talked about Hawaiian homelands, the need for water there. And they have a statutory right that was put in the law by Congress.
Do you think so?
I think our laws are fine. I think they're underfunded, and we don't have the people to do the work.
Are you optimistic?
I'm very optimistic, but I also believe because of the native rights and the constitutional rights, it will be upheld.
Thanks, Ed. I'm sorry I have to stop you. Next week, thank you very much. You guys have been great. Next week on Insights, what is the state of mental health care in Hawaii? Approximately 25% of all U.S. adults have a mental illness, and half of us will develop one in our lifetime. In Hawaii, 3% of us experience serious psychological distress. How are we helping Hawaii's mental health community? That's next time on Insights on PBS Hawaii. I'm Dan Boylan. A hui hou.